Shalom. I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders who is teaching the word in all sincerity and risking their lives to do so. And I also want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who I've been getting my teachings and edifications from. I want to say shalom to the hopeful elect out there scattered across the four corners of the earth. Now, I decided to do this lesson because it was weighing heavy on me in the spirit. It got me to do some research, some digging, because a few days ago, I've been seeing a lot of videos go up, and it's great to see a lot of our brothers and sisters waking up to the truth. However, with that being said, it's great to see that everyone is waking up to the truth, but a lot of you brothers and sisters out there, I see when coming up on, giving your assertion to a lot of these videos or coming up on a comment board, a lot of you guys, when saying the Father's name, the Most High, I see a lot of names such as Yah, Yahweh, Yahuwah, Yeshua, Jehovah, and so forth, etc. All right. And I took it upon myself to do a video on this because there may be a lot of you out there who are getting mixed up, with a lot of vast camps out there, a lot of people who are putting out, scriptures and saying one name, saying a different name, and saying something else. And everybody has their own, assertion, to what they think it is or whatever. Mind you, there is, a group of individuals out there who are bringing out the truth, who has what we, and including myself, believe to be the one true name. And I'm going to prove it here in this lesson, Lord willing. And I hope that you guys are edified through this. So let's jump right into it. So as you can see here on the screen, I have a article here that dives into the history of the Hebrew alphabet and the pronunciation and how and why it was Salakia, not so much why, but how everything pretty much came about. So this gives you guys a little bit of a back history because we must find out what sort of letters was used back then in that ancient time, before even before the Babylonian captivity, because during the time when the Israelites were in the Babylonian captivity, they started going off by taking on the customs and traditions of Babylon, and Babylon was speaking pretty much a different dialect of language. They were because the Jews were there. Yes, they were speaking Hebrew, but until Ezra came up on the scene, he ended up changing it. And you're going to see for yourself, and I'm going to prove that. And I'm going to get some scriptures to back that up too as well, to coincide in what I'm going to show you guys here. Because in order for us to understand what true language was spoken back then, we have to dive deeply into the history of what was being used. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the title of the article here is the Paleo Hebrew Alphabet, which is known as Ancient Hebrew as well. Okay. And it says here, Old Hebrew and the Samaritan alphabet. The Samaritans are, according to themselves, the descendants of the northern tribes of Israel that were not sent into Assyrian captivity and have continuously resided in the land of Israel. The Torah scroll of the Samaritans used an alphabet that is very different from the one used on Jewish Torah scrolls. Okay, it's already telling you there that the Samaritans used a different alphabet according to the Jewish Torah scrolls, which is what you will find in the Jewish scrolls today. According to the Samaritans themselves and Hebrew scholars, this alphabet is the original Old Hebrew alphabet, also called Paleo Hebrew. Keep that in mind. So here you guys have a picture side by side showing you the difference between the Samaritan Torah scroll. As you can see, the characters are way different than the Jewish Torah scroll, which is what a lot of you so-called brothers and Salaki, a lot of you brothers and sisters out there, based off your understanding, you're going based off of. And this is the same text and symbols that even if you go and read in, let's say, for instance, if you go into the Blue Letter, which is the most reliable, heavily used website when reading the scriptures, when you go to look up certain words in the Hebrew form, which is what they call the modern Hebrew, this is the same text that you will see. It says here, even as far back as 1691, this connection between the Samaritan and the Old Hebrew alphabets was made by Henry Dodwell. The Samaritans still preserved the Pentateuch and the Old Hebrew characters, okay? They still preserved it. Humphrey Purdue also writes in 1799, and these 5 books of the Samaritans still have among them written in the Old Hebrew or Phoenician character, which was in use among them before the Babylonish captivity. Keep that in mind. And in which both these and all other scriptures were written. So they're telling you that in the Old Hebrew and Phoenician characters, this alphabet was used amongst the Jews, the Israelites, okay, before the Babylonish captivity. It says here, till Ezra, which was one of the scribes during the time of the Babylonian captivity, transcribed them into that of the Chaldeans, which is Aramaic. So meaning what you see today, Aramaic being the modern day Assyrian Hebrew. Okay. This same theory is presented in the 1831 edition of the Encyclopedia Americana during the Babylonish captivity. They received from the Chaldees the square character in common use, and in the time of Ezra, the old Hebrew manuscripts were copied in Chaldean Aramaic characters. What is that saying? That's saying that when Ezra got on the scene, or even before Ezra got on the scene, let's back up so you guys get a clear understanding of what's being told here. The characters were in Phoenician, meaning Old Hebrew. Okay, they had different characters, the original Paleo Hebrew. So when you think back to Abraham, let's say, going all the way back to Abraham, this is the language that they originally spoke in, Paleo Hebrew, until the Israelites went into captivity under the Babylonians. And when Ezra came on the scene, he transcribed the language to Aramaic, okay, because they were speaking the tongue of the Babylonians, which I believe, if I'm right, during the northern part of Babylon, which was Syrian, and they were speaking in the Syrian tongue. Okay, and I'm gonna prove that in scriptures. Prior to the Babylonian captivity, the Jews used an alphabet very similar to what is found in the Torah scrolls of the Samaritans. Okay, it says here, however, during the Babylonian captivity, the Jews adopted the Aramaic square script, while Paleo Hebrew continued to be used by the Jews into the 1st century AD on a limited basis. It was the Aramaic square script that was most predominantly used to write Hebrew, and this is the script used in most scrolls found in the Dead Sea caves. Okay, now you got a small little bit back history. We're going to continue reading on because there's some more meat within this article. But now I want to back it up with scriptures. So let's go to Ezra, right? Let's go to the book of Ezra. We're going to start at chapter 4. We're going to come down to verse 10, or actually verse 7, Salakia. All right, let me highlight this for y'all so y'all can see. And it says here, this is Ezra chapter 4, verse 7. And in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam, Mithridath, and Tabeel, and the rest of their companions, unto Artaxerxes, king of Persia, And the writing of the letter was written in the Syrian tongue and interpreted in the Syrian tongue, meaning language. Okay. Now, let me grab your attention and go to Ezra, right? We're going to go to, let's go to Ezra 9. And let's see here. No, Salakia. Let's go to Ezra 7. All right. We're going to start at verse 6. It says here, this Ezra went up from Babylon, and he was a ready scribe in the law of Moses, okay, which the Lord God of Israel had given. And the king granted him all his requests according to the hand of the Lord his God upon him. Let's drop down to verse 10. And it says here, for Ezra had prepared his heart to seek the law of the Lord and to do it and to teach in Israel statutes and judgments. Okay. Now, in order for him to teach, he will have to obviously teach them within the language of their enemies that held them captive. Because when you are taken into captivity and you go into a nation of people, you're taking on their traditions, okay? You're taking on their customs and their languages, because obviously they speaking of a different tongue. And we read in Ezra 4 that when the letter was written to the king of Persia, it was written in Syria tongue. Have a look at this, verse 11. It says here, now this is the copy of the letter that the king Artaxerxes gave unto Ezra the priest, the scribe, even a scribe of the words of the commandments of the Lord and of his statutes to Israel. Okay, so the king would have gave Ezra that language, a copy of that letter that was written in a language for the Jews to understand. Okay, now that you got it in scripture, when we go back, when it says here, okay, and these 5 books of the Samaritans still have among them written in the Old Hebrew in the Phoenician character, which was in use among them before the Babylonish captivity, and in which both these and all of the scriptures were written. Okay, so that's saying before the Jews went into the captivity of the Babylonian, they were going off the Paleo Hebrew, the original language. Okay, but then when they went into captivity and they took on the customs and traditions, okay, until Ezra got on the scene, right? When he came, he transcribed them into that of the Chaldeans, Aramaic. All right, because they were, the language was slightly different. So he had to translate them, okay? Because when the Israelites, and then you can read this if we go to Ezra 9, at the top, it reads, now, when these things were done, the princes came to me saying, the people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the lands. They have not separated themselves from the people of the lands according to their abominations, even of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. Okay. Now this is going into them going off and marrying these strangers. Okay. Because the Most High told us when we were going to go to war and go into these lands or whatever, not to give our sons to their daughters and vice versa, and not to marry into those nations. Okay, so when you get taken captive into these nations, you learn their, as I said before, their customs, their traditions, their languages. So this is the reason why Ezra had to transcribe, okay, that language, so that when he went on to teach the statutes and the commandments of the Most High, they will understand. Okay, because there were some Jews who could understand that language, being the old Samaritan language or whatever. But there were most of your Jews who were there under the captivity. They were writing in Aramaic. That's why he had to transcribe it. So let's continue reading on to see what else. Let's get to the meat of this, right? It says here, now we're going to get into how everything looked accordingly. Old Hebrew and the Phoenician alphabet. This is the original alphabet before the Jews went into Babylonian and they started using a different, square scripts. Basically, they started to change the alphabet when Ezra came on the scene. It says here, while Perdue noted that the Old Hebrew alphabet was the same as the Samaritan alphabet, he also pointed out that it is identical to the Phoenician alphabet. So here you see here, right, the Phoenician alphabet. When we compare the letters of these three alphabets, we can see the similarity. So here you have Paleo-Hebrew, which in English looks like the letter G, a small letter G. You have the Samaritan, again, the same exact symbol, and then you have the Phoenician. Okay, looks like a little 9 there, but close to the Samaritan and a Paleo-Hebrew symbol. It says here, this is the letter Bet in the old Hebrew alphabet. Salaki if I mispronounced that. The Samaritan alphabet and the Phoenician alphabet, note the close similarity of each. The 1831 edition of the Encyclopedia Americana also makes this connection between the Phoenician, Samaritan, and Hebrew alphabets. The Hebrew's written characters were the same as the Phoenician, to which the letters of the Samaritan manuscripts approach the nearest. The Phoenicians lived north of the land of Israel, centered around the biblical cities of Sidon and Tyre, in the modern-day Lebanon, between the 16th and 3rd century BC. The Phoenicians shared the same alphabet with the Hebrews and the Samaritans. It was also evident that the Phoenicians and Hebrews spoke the same language, as the Foreign Quarterly Review wrote in its 1838 publication. The learned world had almost universally allowed that the Phoenician language was, with few exceptions, identical with the Hebrew. Okay, this is talking about Paleo-Hebrew language, not the modern day Hebrew, which is Yiddish. Okay, which if you dive deeper to that, I believe takes up after German and Dutch pronunciation of letters and words, because your Jews, your so-called Jews over there in the land of Israel, are not the real Israelites. Okay, they're Khazars. Your Sephardic Jews and what's the other one? You got Sephardic and Ashkenazi. Okay, right? They don't come from none of the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. Okay, but that's a whole different topic for another day, different video. All right, I'm going to bypass that. I'm going to get to the symbols so you guys can understand and see the truth for yourself. Old Hebrew and Aramaic alphabet. All right. It says here, as previously mentioned, the Old Hebrew alphabet was used by all Semitic peoples, including the Arameans, also called the Chaldeans, but evolved independently from the Hebrew. Okay. Because remember, we read earlier, when they were in captivity under the Babylonians, when Ezra the priest came on the scene to save them, to get all of them to part away from the strangers from the other nations. Okay, he changed it to Aramaic because they took on the customs and everything prior to being under captivity. It says here, by the 5th century BC, the time of the Israelites' captivity in Babylon, it no longer resembled the old Hebrew it came from. And it is this Aramaic square script that Israel adopted during their captivity. Okay, that's why you have to, when you read the scriptures, and I see so many people do this, when you go to look up a word in a blue letter, it gives you the Aramaic scripture, because the world at that time universally accepted it. As you see here, said that Israel adopted during their captivity This is letting you know that that was never originally their language in terms of the alphabet and the pronunciation, which we're going to get into later. So you see the distinction. You see 5th century BC Hebrew Aramaic alphabet. At the top had a first spelt it out. And then if you drop down to modern Hebrew, this is how it looks now. Okay? But this was never the case. Old Hebrew and the Greek alphabet. Now we're about to get into the meat of it so you guys can understand. The Old Hebrew alphabet was adopted by the Greeks, okay? Because remember, the Greeks came in right after the Babylonian, right after Assyria. The Old Hebrew alphabet was adopted by the Greeks around the 12th century BC. The first 5 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and Hey. These same letters adopted by the Greeks became the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, and E. I'm going to just say E, Salakia. While Hebrew is usually written from right to left, Greek was written left to right, and the orientation of the letters were reversed from the Old Hebrew. Now, if you have a look here, the first 5 letters of the Old Hebrew. Notice if we scroll back up, let's see if I can leave it right there. Look at the modern day Hebrew written in Aramaic alphabet, and then look at the original Hebrew. It's totally different. It's not the same. Okay? So when you read the scriptures, going back to Abraham, right? This is the first 5 letters of the Old Hebrew alphabet is what the children of after Abraham would have been reading. Abraham would have been reading a different dialect of the Old Hebrew, which I'm going to show you because I actually have some pictures, some templates showing you guys what during Abraham's time they would have went by. And this can also be proven if you actually go to Egypt and look on some of the stones and the rocks there. You can see that same language by the Israelites when they were under the Egyptian captivity written. Okay. Now it says here, the first 5 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are, actually, no, we went through that. Salakia. So you can see the first 5 letters of the Old Greek alphabet. They took the original Old Hebrew alphabet and they reversed it. The Old Hebrew alphabet went from right to left, and in Greeks, they reversed it from left to right. Okay, as you can see. It says here, over the centuries, these ancient Greek letters evolved into their modern Greek forms. So the first 5 letters of the modern Greek alphabet, Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, E. Okay, those are the symbols. Our English alphabet is Roman. And because the Romans adopted the Greek alphabet, we are able to see our own modern English alphabet in these ancient Hebrew turned Greek letters, the A, B, C, D, E. This is where you get the English alphabet from. Okay, we originally had it. When the Greeks came and took over, held us into captivity, they took on what we knew, flipped it around, came up with their version, and then the Romans took after them. Okay, this is history. This is proven. Now, it says here the connection between the Middle Hebrew alphabet and a modern Roman alphabet can be clearly seen in the image below. So now, if you guys have a look on the screen, if you look to the far left of the screen, from top to bottom, that is the ancient Paleo Hebrew. Okay, this was the original Hebrew. If you look to the right of that, you have the English alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, only problem is this. During right before Ezra came on the scene to change it to Aramaic, when the Samaritan, Paleo, and the Phoenician letters were around, they only had 22 alphabet letters. Okay, they did not have vowels such as A, E, I, O, U, what we have in the English language. Okay, so this is where when I said earlier in the video, okay, and I'm going to prove it in a minute, this is where you brothers and sisters who I know mean well, when you're taught things, you do not do your proper research with due diligence. Because when you go call upon the name of Yah, Yahuwah, Yahweh, right, you have to understand, and I'm saying it here because you can clearly see that the Paleo Hebrew, the original Phoenician letter of the alphabet, did not have the vowels. There was no such thing as A, E, I, O, U. So when you say Yeshua, Yahweh, Yah, Yahuda, and all of that, there was no A, E, I, O, U. Okay? I'm going to prove that. All right? So if we go over here, I want to pull up this. All right? This is the unchangeable vowel letters of ancient Hebrew. Okay? Now, if you look to the very left, remember I said that Abraham at the time would have been speaking this language. So if you look down at the top where it says to the left of the screen, ancient Hebrew, those are the symbols that you will see. And if you go to Egypt and you visit and you look at the writings on the stones and the rocks, you will see this language from the Israelites. Okay? This is the same language even unto Moses, which would have been written on the stones of the Ten Commandments. Okay? Now, here, right, if you look next to ancient Hebrew, you have Paleo Hebrew. Okay? Now, this was changed. They changed the letters, but the letters, as you see here, still had the same meaning. Okay? It still had the same meaning. Then, if you look at English in the middle, you see they brought in the vowel letters, A, E, I, O, U. Okay? But a point that I want to make is the Paleo Hebrew at one stage never had vowel letters. This is where the confusion comes in. This is why people call Jehovah, Yahuwah, Yahweh, and all of this. This is the reason why, you brothers and sisters have been taught that is the Most High's name, because you don't understand the history of the language and how it was changed. Now, I'm gonna pull up another template. Here you have another example. If you look at the very top, the original Paleo Hebrew symbols, right? This is the Heavenly Father's name. The name was given as Yahweh, which is his actual name. Okay? That's his actual name. It is Yahweh. So this would have been the name given to Abraham to call upon. But even before Abraham, right? Okay? The name Yahweh showed up in the book of Genesis, I believe, chapter 2, starting around somewhere, I think, between verse 3 and verse 4, and we'll get that. Now, if you drop down, you see the second symbol, and it gives you again Yahweh. Okay? Now, if you drop down again, the third symbols, right? That is what we call today modern Hebrew, which is Yiddish, which means they changed. Now, notice they have the name Yahuwah. But I just told you that during the original language, there were no vowel letters. So you have to ask yourself, going back right before Ezra came on the scene, what were the Israelites calling the Most High? Because even when Ezra came on the scene and when he transcribed the language to Aramaic, they still didn't have the vowel letters. So they were still calling the Most High's name Yahweh. It wasn't Yahuwah. And I'm going to prove it. This next template you see here is the ancient Hebrew alphabet at the very top, which is Paleo Hebrew. And at the very bottom is the Assyrian/Aramaic Hebrew. Notice, right? If you have a look, because remember, we have to read this from right to left. Okay? So you have to read it on the screen from right to left. Okay? Now, this is where this shuts down that entire calling his name Yahuwah, Yahweh, and all of this crap. Okay? If we look at the first letter being Ah to the right side of the screen, and then you have Ba, then you have Ga, Da, Ha, Wa, Za, Ha, Ta, Ya. Notice the Ya symbol, okay? Then if we go back to Ha, and then we go back to Wa, okay? That's how you spell his name, all right? Those are the symbols. Now, if we drop down to modern Hebrew, right around the time Ezra came on the scene, when they were in captivity of the Babylonians, start at the right side of the screen. Ah, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, Wa, Za, Ha, Ta, Ya. Yahweh. Okay? You see the symbol for Yah? And go back to the right, you see the symbol for Ha, and then Wa. Now, I'm going to prove the modern Hebrew alphabet during the time when Ezra came on the scene that they were calling him Yahweh and not Yahweh, because there is no E sound. The E sound came in later when the so-called Khazars, when they migrated into that land and they changed the language and they started adding in that vowel letter from German and Dutch dialect, which goes back to, again, coming from the Romans and the Greeks when they set up the alphabets from left to right. They did it in reverse to our original language. Okay, so if we go to the scriptures and we go to, what do I want to go to? Let's go to Genesis 2 and 4. All right, so let's pull that up so you guys can see what I'm talking about. We're going to get the name of the Father. Now you see here how blue letter has his name, Jehovah. Okay, Jehovah. But if you notice here at the top, look where it says H3068, and then it has the Hebrew letters, right? Those are the same letters that, if I go back to the template, I want you guys to have a good look. The first letter is Yah. The second one is Ha. We're reading it from right to left on the screen. So again, the first little symbol is Yah. Okay, let's find that. Look down on the modern Hebrew alphabet. Find Yah. Okay, it's to the left side of the screen, the second last. Okay, now let's go back. Now we back at the top, H3068. Look at the symbols. The second symbol is Ha. We look at the modern Hebrew alphabet at the bottom and find Ha. Okay, found it. Now if we go back at the top, in the middle symbol should be Wa. Wa. Let's go back to the chart. Modern Hebrew alphabet, find Wa. Should be right in the middle. Wa. It's highlighted in red. Wa. Okay, you see that symbol? Wa. Now, the last symbol is the same as the second symbol, which is Ha. So if we read it, if we go off the chart, it should be Yahweh. Yahweh. But notice they are pronouncing it Yahuwah or Yahweh, because they've added in vowels and consonants, right, at a later stage. And I just showed you this is why they called it the unchangeable vowel letters, because the vowel letters came in after the Greeks took the original language and then they added in their own alphabet. That's how they got alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and E. And then when the Romans came in to do the English alphabet, they added in the vowels at that time. Okay, so after that happened, when the Khazars came in, they changed the entire language again. They already took the original Aramaic when Ezra came on the scene back then during the Babylonian times. You see that the modern Hebrew, 600 BC, had the same pronunciations as Paleo Hebrew. There was no E-I-O-U. There was no vowels. The only thing that changed was the symbols. But in terms of the pronunciation, it still remained the same. So if you go to Paleo Hebrew, his name was pronounced Yahweh. Okay? When Ezra came on the scene, he dropped, if you look at the bottom, modern Hebrew, it's still the same pronunciation, Yahweh. So where are we getting Yehuda, Yah, Yahweh, and all of this other names? Because you guys are interpreting modern day Hebrew alphabet, which was not you guys were interpreting today's Hebrew, which they've changed the consonants because of the English language. Okay, and let me break it down even further for you. The English language in general is considered to be the hardest language to learn across the globe. And I'm going to give you a reason. In the English language, we have so many diverse words, or not even so many diverse words. We have so many words that can mean more than one meaning. And I'm going to give you an example. Now, as a disclaimer, I got to say this. As a disclaimer, this video is for edification purposes and for learning, education. So what I'm about to say, I am in no way offending anyone's sexuality and their beliefs. This is purely for edification and education, okay? That's my disclaimer. Anybody who's over the age of 55 plus years old, go back, or not even that. I want to say anybody who is over the age of 65 plus and over, go back to the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, around the hippie era. During that time, there were a lot of people who were given a word or expressed towards of as being gay. Now, that word gay symbolized a different meaning back then. If you were called gay, that was actually known as being happy. Okay? That was known as being happy. But now let's fast forward in 2020. Okay? Now, you cannot call somebody gay because it's offensive. Because when you call somebody gay, the terminology for that word has changed. So now what they've done is, for you to call someone gay, you're referring to their sexual well-being towards the same sex. Okay, if that makes sense. So you're being disrespectful by calling that person gay. Okay, whereas you may have old timers. That's why I said to the people who are 60 plus and over, they will interpret gay as being happy. Because back in their era, when that term was used, that was an English word to be that was used to be happy. Now that same English word has been given a different meaning. So it's the same thing here. What we see here is, you see here on the screen, the ancient Hebrew alphabet. They were calling upon the name Yahweh, which is the Father's name. And if you drop down, the only thing that changed was the symbols, but as far as the pronunciation, is still the same. Now, when the Greeks came over after we got out of the captivity, right, of the Assyrians, when the Greeks came, they flipped our alphabet and they started writing from left to right. And then when the Romans came in, they flipped it again and they started adding in vowels and consonants. This is the problem the when the 1611 King James Bible version came out. You will notice, anybody who has a copy of that Bible, you will notice the word Jesus is not in there, but it's Iousus, which is Greek for Jesus, because the letter J didn't come into play in the American lexicon until 1634 by a Italian man by the name of, I think, Giorgino Trisolano, something to that effect. I gotta look up that guy's name, but they called him the progenitor of the letter J, because he established the sound of the letter J, and that's when they brought in the letter J. Okay, you Christians wouldn't even understand that, because you don't do due diligence to do your proper research. Okay, that's why the Most High's son, his name is not Jesus, it's Yahushua. Okay, and you can get Yahushua just by going through the characters within this letter chart, because this was the original language that they were speaking until they changed everything. That's why they place stumbling blocks. And that's why these so-called Bible scholars come up on the scene, and you see these so-called Jews as well, when they do, videos, documentaries on the History Channel and all of that crap, telling you, oh, yes, it was, Yeshua, Jehovah, and all of this crap. They're giving you the modern day English translation. You have to go back and understand. Right? You have to go back and understand what the true language was. But not only that, what sort of letters, symbols, what was the alphabet at that time that they were using to get a clear indication of what name were they calling upon. Because I can promise you, they were not calling upon Jehovah. They were not calling upon Yehuda. They were not calling upon Yah. They wasn't saying Yahweh. The name that they were calling upon was Yahweh. The first top two, Yahweh. There were no vowels within the name. This was the original Paleo-Hebrew. Okay, and let's back that up some more. Let's back that up. So I want to pull up for you guys. I got an article here. Aramaic language. All right, if I can go back. Here we go. Now check this out. It says Aramaic language, Semitic language of the northern, central, or northwestern group that was originally spoken by the ancient Middle Eastern people known as Armenians. It was most closely related to Hebrew, Syriac, meaning Syria, and Phoenician, and was written in a script derived from the Phoenician alphabet. Hey, what did we just read? What did we just read? Paleo-Hebrew, Samaritan, Phoenician, it's the same. This is the original language. You understand? So again, I can't stress this enough. Phoenician, Samaritan, Paleo-Hebrew, even dropped down to modern day Hebrew when Ezra came on the scene, before the Greeks changed everything. The only thing that changed in the Aramaic Hebrew before the Greeks changed and the Romans translated and gave the vowel letters, the symbols were the only thing that changed in Aramaic Hebrew. But you can see the pronunciation was still the same. So his name could not have been Yah, Yehuda, Yahweh. It was Yahweh. Okay? So I hope you guys were sincerely edified. And what I'm going to do to further prove this, I'm actually going to do a second part video where I'm going to have proof of one of the elders who went to visit South America, where you had Israelites in South America, right? And during that time, there was a stone that had Paleo Hebrew written on it, not Aramaic, not this modern day, gibberish that they call Hebrew, where they want to give you names like Huda, Yahweh, and all of that crap. But you're going to see evident proof of a video of an elder who's going to show you the name Yahweh written on stone. Okay? So this is going to be part 1. Okay? And look out for part 2 of that video. All right? Shalom.